Good morning. So today's lesson we're talking about data protection and things that can be done to protect your data. So we're talking about encryption, talking about a backup and recovery policy, and access control. So we've talked about acceptable use policies as a document that you have to sign when you start a school. So you've all signed an AUP, your parents have all signed an AUP. You're not allowed your login for the school computers until you've signed that piece of paper. And once you've signed that piece of paper, that can then, most of the time, be forgotten about. But if people break the rules, we remind them of the fact that they have signed those rules in line with the sanctions. It's very similar in business. If you work for a business and the business gives you a phone or the business gives you a laptop, and then you use that laptop or that phone for something dodgy, then because of the contract that you've signed and the acceptable usage policy, you could then be fired or even prosecuted, as in the police could get involved, as a result of breaking that policy. But most of the time, people stick to the rules and stay out of trouble. So we want to talk this lesson about why encryption is necessary, how encryption works a little bit. We want to talk about the importance of backing up files. Might also touch on the security risks of backing up files, because if you have sensitive and confidential information that's stored on an insecure backup, then that's obviously a security risk. And there's no point backing stuff up unless you can recover it. Help, sorry. Then we've got access control, and remember there's a difference between authentication, which is just logging in or not logging in, and access control. So you've already done authentication, you put your username and your password in, and you can access the school network. But now there's access control, because you can't access some of the files that I can, because you've got student level access, I've got teacher level access. I can't access every file on the network because I don't have admin level access. It's all about granting what you need on a need to know basis, so that people don't, and usually it is accidentally, or maliciously, which means kind of deliberately with bad, mal means bad intent. The only way really to ensure perfect security is to guarantee physical security, as in we'll lock the door, send you all outside, and then you can't access the computers. That's what we mean by physical security. Sometimes you'll see films where people will get a digger and dig out a cash machine to physically get to the money behind it. Or you might see them take a power drill and drill a little hole in the casing for the cash machine so that they can plug in their USB stick with malware to program it to spew out £50 notes. So if you can guarantee physical security, then that's got to be good. But remember, if you've got perfect physical security but you can remote in via a network, well, that's not good. So if you're watching at home, I'm not going to record this part, so pause that. We watched the video, we talked about encryption. I didn't like the definition in the video because that just talked really about encoding, which was scrambling something. We need to talk about the fact that it requires a key. So making plain text unreadable without a key, and then making an encrypted ciphertext readable using a key would be my preferred definition. The key is the password. Symmetric encryption means that we use the same key for both encryption and decryption. Asymmetric encryption is the opposite. We use a different key for encryption and decryption, which works using a combination of a private key that only you know and a public key that anybody can know. And that's when we move on to talk about backups. I'll let you do these yourselves because you can access these links. So I've left you to work through most of these by yourself, but there's a couple of questions all about asymmetric encryption which I want to pick up for on today's extension, which is to do a little bit of research around some of the algorithms used for this. You'll see RSA, which is named after the researchers that first found a mathematical algorithm that would work really nicely for this. I'm not going to explain the maths, you can research that if you want, but the principles and the ideas, can I do this in Word? Let's have a look. Is there a little picture of a person? Can I go for a smiley face? There we go. Let's say we have, oh my goodness, what horrible colour. We've got two people. Two people want to be able to communicate with each other, and in most encryption textbooks or web pages, you call them Alice and Bob, because they're not particularly creative and they just go for A and B. So Alice wants to share a message with Bob, but sadly, this is why I hate doing stuff in Word, there may well be somebody else listening into the communication channel, which is going to be Harry the hacker. There we go, a malicious, and if they're malicious, you can tell that people are bad because they have sad faces. Okay. There we go. So we've got a malicious hacker going on here. I'm going to call it, and let's not go for gender stereotypes. Let's go for Harriet, the hacker. Oh, come on, Word. I should have done this on PowerPoint. Blooming terrible. There we go.
It's not too late to return the PowerPoint.
It's not too late, but we can do it. But you're going to have to do it in Word anyway. So we've got Alice who wants to send a message to Bob. If we did it traditionally, like they could just walk over and hand over a message, but Harry could kind of have a look and snatch the message off them. If it's digital, remember that message, Bob might not even know if Harry's got a copy of it. It might be sent over a wire, in which case Harry just connects to the same network and can packet sniff, can see those packets and see every single bit, and Alice and Bob would have no idea that someone was listening. Or it could be sent wirelessly, and it's even easier for Harriet to sniff those packets and see the contents of all of that data. So what we want to do instead is encrypt it. So we want to go through this encryption process, encryption, and into encryption is a plain text. That's the actual message that Alice wants to transmit. It could be, meet me at 12:30, I'll sell you confidential secrets that compromise our government, whatever it is. So it goes through encryption. The output from encryption, oh, Word, don't be so terrible, is a ciphertext, which is something that anyone can read, but very few people can understand unless they have that key. So plain text and ciphertext, two very important words. Did I not write text? There we go. Plain text and ciphertext. That ciphertext can then be received by Bob, which goes through a process which is the opposite of encryption. It's decryption. And the output of decryption is the plain text again. Come on, Word, don't be like that. There we go. So we get the original plain text back. So if Harry intercepts the plain text, we've got problems. So the plain text stays securely on, Alice's computer. The ciphertext gets communicated over the internet publicly. Anyone can see it, including Harry or Harriet, but they can't understand it. It's just meaningless zeros and ones. They can brute force it, but hopefully that will take a very long time to do. So it all comes down to what happens in this box, the encryption decryption box. If it is a symmetrical algorithm, then what happens is, well, Harry or Harriet might get that key. And in World War II, the big bomb computers would spend hours and hours and hours every morning working through millions of different possibilities, and then eventually it would find a crib, it would find a weakness, so that you could hack all of the securely transmitted Nazi communication on that day. As soon as the malicious or benevolent interceptor, depending on your perspective, as soon as they know the key, they can intercept everything transmitted with that key. So instead, what happens if asymmetric encryption is, well, we don't just use one key. So this is symmetric encryption at the moment. Oh, it's so hard to do this in Word. The same key is used for encryption and decryption. If we go asymmetric, then Alice knows Alice's private key. But you don't want to use that for the key, because you'd have to share it with Bob. And we don't want to do that. So we use Bob's public key. But if that is the only thing used for encryption, well, that's public, isn't it? So Harry knows that. So Harry could just find Bob's public key, which means this is not secure. But the beauty of asymmetric encryption, let's make it a bit smaller so I don't have to make a separate box, is we combine Bob's public key with Alice's, come on Word, you can do this, Alice's private key. Because Alice knows that, she's the one encrypting. Bob doesn't know that, but because of the very clever maths in the algorithm, the RSA algorithm, or something similar, Bob can get back to the plain text using Bob's private key, which Harry doesn't know, and Alice doesn't know, but Bob obviously does. So if Bob uses his own personal private key and Alice's public key, the magic of the algorithm, and it's not magic, it's just maths, so maths is magic really. These are not the same as each other. B's public key is not the same as B's private key. They are mathematically related, but it's almost impossible to work out your private key even if you know the public key. But the mathematical link between the two means that this is now possible. And this is absolutely revolutionary. It means that A never has to visit B. They don't need to trust each other. They don't need to have communicated before, but they can still communicate in a way that is perfectly secret just between the two of them. Anyone else can observe what's transmitted as ciphertext, but they cannot decrypt it because this malicious person does not know the private key for both people. So your job is to draw this little diagram and then do a little bit of research into the RSA algorithm and try and follow a bit about how it works. Remember, you do not need to remember or articulate or understand this for the exam. This is much more A-level standard stuff. So when you finished your Word document, do save it please and then upload it to Half Term 5 Issues and Impact 1. And whilst you're uploading it, double check, read your feedback on P28, 26, 27, see if there are any gaps, see if there's anything else that you might want to finish off, and then re-upload those for me. Thank you.